right. Next up, friends and relatives, we'd like to welcome the CEO of the Wilderness Foundation Global. Andrew Muir is one of South Africa's most influential conservationists and social entrepreneurs. Having run conservation and developmental NGOs for over 30 years, he is a specialist in the fields of protected area expansion and management, sustainable and ecotourism, advocacy and environmental policy, and youth and community development. In 2008, he won the Rolex Award for his innovative strategies in the conservation sphere. He is also a fellow of the Schwab Foundation, World Economic Forum, and yes, he has an accent. Let's give a warm welcome to Andrew Muir.
Thank you all, and really good to be here. I think on behalf of all of us here, I would like to thank the Council and for the great privilege to being here, to being part of this ceremony, and I think for co-hosting us and for allowing us all into your home. So thank you. This story, as you've heard, really begins with Ian and Mukubu when they came together in the early 60s. Very volatile time in our country. In the midst of apartheid, forced removal of the majority of our countrymen from their land. 84% of the population was moved onto 12% of the land. And yet these two individuals came together in the midst of that time and came together to protect a special piece of Africa called Umfolozi, nestled between the white and the black Umfolozi in the northern part of KwaZulu-Natal. This is the oldest formerly protected area in Africa, older than Yellowstone and other national parks here. It was formerly proclaimed in 1895. But more importantly, it was actually declared a conservation area by Zulu kings 200 years before that. It was declared an area where only Zulu royalty could go into. That declaration, that sacred space, ensured that the white rhino, which was hunted out when the white hunters came into Africa, over 100,000 of them were hunted out, and that ensured that the few remaining white rhino, which Ian and Mukubu, many decades later, would come onto the scene to protect. And you're going to hear that story in a few days' time by Michael Charlton. So what we have here are these two extraordinary individuals who developed a relationship, as you heard, and who really started in Africa the concept of wilderness trails or primitive trails. Up until then, you were not allowed to walk in these protected areas because of dangerous game. And they started the concept of taking people on foot into these areas. And that started a movement as hundreds of people came to have this first time ever experience. So what also happened is that what Ian and Mukubu did at this very difficult time in our history in Southern Africa, they also brought together white and black people to have that experience, even though it was technically illegal at the time. Mukubu himself was a victim of forced removal. Makubu's family were born in an area that the Umfolozi Game Reserve was expanded into, and they were forcibly moved from that area. In fact, the very area where we run wilderness trails today was the area where Makubu and his clan, his father and his grandparents lived. And so what's extraordinary about this story is how Makubu, as a ranger, with Ian, started trails and took people into the very area that he was forcibly removed from, and his family were not allowed to be part of. And yet he still felt that he had a responsibility to show people how important that area is, not just for its natural beauty, but culturally as well. Makubu, in all the years that I guided with him, never spoke English. One of the few times he did was when I asked him what wilderness meant to him, and his answer was home. And so I think it's important for us to understand this at this time and in this place. At the end of every wilderness trail, Ian and Makubu introduced the concept of a indaba. Now, a indaba is where it's a gathering of the people in a circle to discuss issues, where they would reflect on the trail and the experience that they had. The whole idea of an indaba is that everyone has something important to say. Ian and Makubu then thought, well, why not have a big indaba? And that is where the idea of the Congress, the World Wilderness Congress, this Congress, nearly 50 years ago, was born. And the first Congress was held in 1977 in Johannesburg. An extraordinary time, because it was a few months after the Soweto riots and uprisings, which started the process of change in South Africa, which eventually led to the end of apartheid in 1994, 92, and then 94 we had our democratic government elected. So this idea of this big indaba that we are at now was born around the campfire in the Umfolozi through all the trails that were taken there. And Ian had the first one in Johannesburg, and then very soon after that, in early 1980, met Vance Martin for the first time, and very quickly gave that responsibility of organizing these congresses to Vance. And for 40 years, Vance and his team under WILD ran and organized these congresses, which many of you here have attended. And this movement grew, and the depth of these congresses and what they meant as a global gathering for issues of nature and people and wildlife grew, and the movement grew. And I think we are now at a point where, after Scotland, Australia, India, Norway, USA twice, South Africa twice, Spain, Mexico, and here we are now, at a critical time once again in our history of the world, and in particular, as we've heard already, in our history of the protection of what is what we know as our nature and our biodiversity. Vance, I want to thank you for those 40 years of taking this movement forward to the point where you now have also handed that torch on, as Ian and Makubu did to you, you've now done to Wilderness Foundation Global, and to Amy and Adam and Jennifer and the team at WILD. Oh, but thank you on behalf of all of us here. The World Wilderness Congress is spiritually held by the four organizations that Ian and Makubu founded, and Amy's spoken about that. The heads of those foundations are all here: Cheryl, Curry, Joe, Roberts, Amy, and Jennifer. You'll notice they're all women and myself. And I think that's important at this time again of Mother Earth and the healing that needs to take place, that as a movement, we very strongly, and I can assure you they're all very strong ladies, led by women and a stuttering white South African. You know, there's another wonderful African word, a Nguni word called Ubuntu. And it's really about humanity to others. And it talks to, I am what I am because of who we are. And we are what we are because of Ian and Makubu, because of Vance, because of John Hendy, because of Maggie Bryant, because of Frank Raimondo, and all of those that have helped to build this movement over many, many decades. This is the world's longest running public event for the environment. Isn't that extraordinary? In 1991, I was on the last trail that Makubu led. Him and Ian were training me. I trained as a social scientist. I'd spent 13 years understudying them, and they were teaching me the ways of the wild. And we got to the end of the trail. We got to that Indaba, and Makubu turned to the group and simply said, in Zulu, it's time to rest. Ian and him said nothing more about it. That was the last trail Makubu did. 3 years later, I was leading a trail with Ian and a group of politicians into the Umfolozi, and I saw old Ian was struggling because he never let me lead. I was always behind him, and at that time, our great guide, Baba Gomed, and Ian let me lead, and I knew something was up. And towards the end of that trail, we came to a quarry where the trail ends, and we have a vehicle there. And as we were about half a kilometer from the quarry, Ian turned to me and said, stop, which I did, and I stopped the whole group. Now, both myself and Komed, there was no dangerous wildlife around us. We were absolutely sure that we were right at the end of our journey. And Ian turned to me and said, Andrew, there's a rhino there. And I looked around, and there was a ridge behind Ian, and there was no rhino there. And but we all kept quiet. And next minute, this rhino came out. This is a big bull white rhino. And it came to say goodbye to Ian, and Ian walked towards it. As you can see there, my wife was on that trail. She took the picture. And when we got to the Indaba half an hour later, Ian turned to me and said, that's my last trail. I'm done. This picture means a lot to our movement, and it's my great honor today to give a copy of this print to Chief Looking Horse on behalf of our movement, and because I know that this white rhino is very significant for all he represents and does. And I think also Ian's role in protecting this species from extinction. So if I can ask for the picture to be brought out and for us to give this, please, over. Lastly, let me just say that what we've always done, because I am what I am because of who we are, as a movement, we're at a time now where once again we need to look deeply at ourselves. And this event gives us an opportunity to look at reinterpreting and deepening our understanding and feeling for the wilderness concept. As Ian and Mukubu embrace change at a critically important time of our history that ensured that we have the wildlife and have the efforts that we do to this day, so I think we as a movement also need to embrace this moment. And I say again that for Mukubu, wilderness was home. I thank you.